Good afternoon and welcome to the September 11th edition of Office Hours presented by the Maryland Center for Collegiate Financial Wellness. My name is Dr. Tisa Silver Kennedy and I'm your host for today. I thank you so much for joining us. Before we get into the questions that have come in from our community, I just want to tell you, as always, a bit about the center and issue a quick disclaimer, then give some general updates, and then we'll go straight into the questions that have come in, and we have got a lot. So, Office Hours is presented by the Maryland Center for Collegiate Financial Wellness, a nonprofit organization in the state of Maryland that was started in 2021 with a vision for all college and career school students. Our vision is that those students will be able to achieve these 6 pillars of collegiate financial wellness. Those are being creditworthy, ready, resilient, empowered, successful, and thriving. If this sounds like a vision that you would like to support, I strongly encourage you to visit us online at MCCFW.org to learn more about our programs and events, as well as ways that you can support. Next, I'd like to issue a very quick disclaimer. And that is that the information presented in office hours is presented for informational purposes only. It does not constitute personal, legal, or financial advice. And I really feel like I have to emphasize the legal part because there's so much legal drama going on in the world of student loans right now. But when you're making strategy decisions about your student loans, this is where you would need to take the information that you are, receiving from organizations like us. You also need to stay in contact with your lender, your servicer, and take an inventory of your household characteristics, your goals. There's just a litany of things that are all about you that you need to consider before you make any decisions regarding your strategy for student loan repayment. So office hours is really meant to shed some light on the issues that borrowers are experiencing, but also to help you supplement those personal characteristics, preferences, and goals as you try to find the best repayment strategy to take care of your loans. All right, moving on. There has been a lot going on in the student loan space. We've had an injunction that's placed on SAVE, which is Saving on a Valuable Education, the most affordable income-driven repayment plan issued to date, which was implemented originally in July of 2023. The second part of SAVE was supposed to go into effect in July of 2024. And that second part was actually meant to reduce payments for people with undergraduate loans. And some people would have seen their loan balances drop by as much as 50%. Some people who had lower payments would have seen their payments go to zero. And even with those lowered payments, they still would have been earning credit toward forgiveness via income-driven repayment or by way of public service loan forgiveness. And because of the injunction, now everyone who's enrolled in the SAVE program, those loans that are enrolled in SAVE have been placed into a forbearance. During that forbearance, interest is not accruing, but the downside of that forbearance is that right now we've been told that that time will not count as credit toward income-driven repayment forgiveness or toward public service loan forgiveness. So many of our people are just feeling like they're at a standstill. They want to know if there's something else that they can do right now to continue making progress. And unfortunately, we have many more questions than answers. As far as the legal side of this is concerned, the injunction just means that SAVE is not allowed to move forward at all. So you'll notice that if you go online to studentaid.gov, the application to apply for SAVE is not available. In fact, the application to apply for any income-driven repayment plan, you're not going to find it. It's not available online. There's a paper version, but we've been told there's a processing pause. So if you fill out the paper version, we don't know how long it will take for that application to be processed. Furthermore, the application to consolidate has also been taken down. So two of the tasks that we spend a lot of our time helping people with are applying for income-driven repayment plans and applying to consolidate. And right now, those applications are not available online. A big message that I want to share with everyone is that PSLF still exists. Public service loan forgiveness has not been canceled. That's a frequent question that we get. Although the parts of consolidating and completing the IDR applications have been put on hold, PSLF still exists. So if you work for a qualifying employer, please do make sure that you're continuing to submit your PSLF application every 12 months, if or when you change jobs, as well as when you reach that 120th month. And that brings me to the next point, is that we have a lot of people that we're expecting to reach 120 like this fall, several in October. And now that their loans are in a forbearance because they were enrolled in SAVE, they're wondering what's going to happen. Do I have to wait for this lawsuit to get resolved to get back on track for PSLF? And for those people, I just want to remind them that there's a new option called the PSLF buyback that was implemented by the Biden-Harris administration. And the way that the buyback is supposed to work is that after you reach what would have been your 120th qualifying payment, you want to submit that buyback request so that the months that have been spent in forbearance can be transitioned or transformed into qualifying payments. But you'd have to pay the same amount that you would have paid had you been enrolled in an income-driven repayment plan and the loans had not been in forbearance. So for my people who are looking for their PSLF originally to come within the next few months, just keep the buyback in mind, because after you reach what would have been 120, there's a possibility that you can purchase those months and convert them from forbearance months over to qualifying months and still stay on track for PSLF. There will be some additional processing time because those buyback requests, we've heard that people have been waiting for quite some time, and I don't think we've heard of anyone who has experienced success with the buyback option just yet. Some people are still waiting for it. So please just keep on working your qualified employment. If your loans are in that forbearance right now, you don't need to pay extra. At this point, we just need to wait for a resolution to the lawsuit. And once you get to what would have been 120, file that buyback request so you can at least get that process started. In terms of other events, lawsuits, that's pretty much dominating everything. So as soon as we hear anything about a resolution, we will definitely be reporting it. But I will just urge you all to just be patient and know that there is nothing that you could have done to prevent this, because this is bigger than all of us individually. And in terms of how long this might last, because that's a question we get quite often, it's going to be a while, more than likely. The way that the timing of the courts is working, it looks like this is probably going to work its way up much higher. And the question might not be answered until sometime next year, perhaps even as long as early summer. But again, we don't know this for sure. In the meantime, just know that if you have that qualifying employment, just keep that job. If your loans are in forbearance, you don't need to make extra payments. Just wait for a resolution. And once the resolution is found, we will be able to help you identify a more clear path forward. All righty, now we can get into the questions that have come in from our community, and you'll notice that some of them are going to be about SAVE and PSLF. So let's go for the first question. The question is, I received a notification about a forbearance due to the SAVE federal injunction. The forbearance begins in July 2024. However, I just received notice and I made my July and August payment prior to the date on the notice. Will they count for PSLF? Let's take a look at the answer. Okay, so during this forbearance, as I mentioned, the Department of Education has said so far that the forbearance period will not count toward public service loan forgiveness or toward income-driven repayment forgiveness. During that forbearance, no payment is required. So you don't have to make payments. And as of right now, we don't see any incentive for people who are pursuing PSLF to make payments at the moment. The interest rate has been set to 0. As I mentioned before, time in this forbearance will not count toward forgiveness under IDR or PSLF. And payments made during the forbearance, we have heard, will go towards satisfying future payments. So if you wanted to make payments, that's totally your choice. But if you're pursuing PSLF, there's really no incentive to continue paying during the forbearance. Instead, What we recommend is taking that money that you are supposed to be paying toward the student loans and putting it aside so that that way, if you are one of the people that, 120 is on your horizon within the next couple of months, once you go through the buyback, if you're approved for it and you have to pay what you would have paid had the loans been in repayment instead of a forbearance, you don't want to have to scramble to try to come up with that money. So if you want to pay it, that's your choice. But for the PSLF people who are very close, just make sure that you are setting that money aside so that when you do need it to cross that line over 120, you have it available for the buyback. All right, let's move on to the next question. All right, this question is from a more recent graduate. It says, I graduated in May 2024 when McFew visited my place of employment, and this person is a teacher. I was still in a grace period. I'm starting repayment soon. Can I move forward with PSLF? This is a great question coming from the class of 2024. And I just want to reiterate before I get to the background of the answer that PSLF has not been canceled. Okay. The application for PSLF is still available online at studentaid.gov/PSLF. So let's move on to the answer. Bit of background first. This person graduated in May 2024. And for people who are just entering a grace period for the first time, the grace period is 6 months. So we would not expect payments to start for this person probably until around November or December. The default plan that you'll be enrolled in if you're not selecting any other plan would be the standard repayment plan, which is a 10-year plan. And with the standard plan, because it's a fixed 10-year plan, at the end of 10 years, if you've made all of your payments on time as promised, you won't have a balance left to forgive. So right now, the loans are set to go into the standard repayment plan. There have been no consolidations, no changes to the loans since graduation, and the person is scheduled to enter repayment as projected in November of 2024. As for what we recommend they do, let's take a look at the answer. The PSLF application is still available at studentaid.gov, and to complete that application, you are going to need the employer ID number for the organization that you work for, and you can find that on your W-2 or likely on your pay stub as well. You'll also need contact information for a person who can verify your employment. If you're a teacher, it's probably best to ask a member of your administration to see if there's a person in the building who would verify your employment, or if that request needs to go up to like the district level or a central HR office representative. So if you have the contact information for that person, particularly their email address, you're going to need that for the application. You'll also need to know your employment date, when you started. If you don't know the exact date, that's okay. The person who's completing your application should be able to edit it from their end using the online platform, which is DocuSign. Just a reminder that with PSLF, the repayment plans that qualify for PSLF are all of the income-driven repayment plans as well as the 10-year standard plan. So if you're making payments on the 10-year standard plan to begin with, those payments will count toward PSLF. Once all the lawsuits, once the lawsuit has been, a resolution has been reached there, we'll know what will happen with the IDR plans going forward. And if it's cheaper for you to switch to an income-driven repayment plan, which for most people it is, then you can apply at that time and switch out of standard and into IDR. Just keep in mind that it's probably going to be a while before we find out what's going to happen with the income-driven repayment application. And just keep that in mind when you're visiting studentaid.gov. IDR and consolidation are not currently available, but the application for PSLF is available. All right, let's move on to the next question. Okay, I worked with my student loan strategy coach on May 22nd, 2024. I had to consolidate my FFELP consolidation loans, and I completed the PSLF application. I have seen some changes with my loans on my credit report. However, everything seems to just be in limbo. What is next? That is such an appropriate assessment that things are just in limbo. There have been a lot of delays, and we're not sure when things are going to move back to the pace prior to the PSLF application processing pause. So, great and definitely valid question. Let's take a look at the answer. So a little bit of background for this person. They graduated and they consolidated their loans, but their loans were consolidated under the FFELP program. And this is great background for people who have been thinking about PSLF and wondering if they have the right loan types. PSLF is only available for direct loans. So we've met with some people who consolidated before and thought that just by consolidating, that meant they were on track for PSLF. But your consolidation loan has to be a direct consolidation loan for it to qualify for PSLF. So this person consolidated once before, and their loans were FFELP consolidation loans. They consolidated again so that the loans would become direct and therefore qualifying for PSLF. They consolidated during the PSLF processing pause. During the processing pause on PSLF applications, the application to consolidate was still available. So as long as they got in before that June 30th IDR adjustment deadline, they should be on track to get the greatest benefit. Their loan consolidation was also completed before this injunction that has basically shut down SAVE, as well as the consolidation process and all of the access to income-driven repayment plans. They completed the application for IDR within their consolidation application, and currently their loans are not in repayment. So let's take a look at the answer. All right. Unfortunately, right now, there's not a lot that we can do because of the injunction. So our recommendation is to check with your loan servicer to find out the status of your loans, your consolidation loans. We've seen that a lot of people who completed the application for IDR within the consolidation application needed to complete another IDR application for their loans to actually be enrolled in IDR. So right now, of course, that's not possible because the IDR application is not available online, but you're definitely not alone in this kind of wondering what's your status and whether your IDR application went through. Your loan could be in a forbearance, and if your consolidation loan is included in this SAVE forbearance, that means that this period would not count toward PSLF. However, the buyback is still an option for you once you get to 120. What's likely happening is your application for PSLF is still pending because it got caught up in the time where they weren't processing any applications at all. Also, personally, I have an application that's caught up in that pause, and my account still has not been updated. And if you log into studentaid.gov, once you get to the dashboard section, there's a link on the right side that says track your PSLF progress. You can check there, and as soon as you click on that page, you'll see a blue text bar across the top that reminds you that there was a processing pause from May through early July, and that payment counts probably have not been updated past April of 2024. So just like you, we're waiting to see when they're going to work their way through this backlog of PSLF applications. All right, let's move on to the next question. It's time for me to recertify my income for an IDR plan. The link online is not available. What options do I have, and what are the repercussions of not updating my income on time? I'm glad to see that there's so many questions about IDR because IDR provides a pathway to forgiveness on its own, but it also provides a pathway to forgiveness through PSLF. I just am really disappointed to not be able to provide actionable steps right now because of the injunction that is blocking the IDR applications and affecting people who are enrolled in PSLF. So let's take a look at the answer here. I had a question for this borrower, which was, which IDR plan are you enrolled in? That was just out of curiosity, because if they had been enrolled in SAVE, then those loans are in forbearance. There should not be any reminders for IDR recertification going out. However, some of them are going out. And I can't speak for the servicers, but my educated guess is that because they were expecting, new payments to be reduced for people who were enrolled in SAVE as of July 1st, and then a lawsuit came along that got that part of SAVE blocked temporarily. Then that was reversed on appeal. Then there was this larger injunction. There were communications that were set in place long before this lawsuit rose to the level of causing a stay and ultimately an injunction. And it doesn't appear that the servicers have been able to turn off those communications ahead of them going out. So, in more concise terms, you might be receiving communications that were meant for you based on whatever the rules were much earlier this year. And now that all these changes have taken place, those communications have already been queued to go out, and they're going out even though larger conditions have changed. So you're going to see some things that don't make sense. You might receive some messaging that is completely contradictory to a message you received the day before. And unfortunately, that's just the situation that we're dealing with right now. And we'll probably be dealing with that for many more months to come. For right now, we urge you to practice patience, wait for a resolution to this federal injunction, and we'll just have to wait until the case works its way up through the courts. After the court resolution, you should be able to recertify your income. And to make this process automatic, we encourage you to grant federal student aid permission to use your federal tax information, or this might be referred to as FTI. That way, each year, they can pull the information off of your tax transcript from the IRS so that you don't have to be involved in sending them documentation and getting caught up in kind of a back and forth when it comes time to this IDR recertification process. For right now, I don't know of any repercussions for SAVE borrowers who do not recertify their income, because right now their loans should be in forbearance and the IDR application online is off, and I don't see how anyone could reasonably expect you to recertify your income when the application to do so is not available. So just hang in there, and let's wait for a resolution patiently. All right, let's move on to the next question. All right, this question is also about consolidation of IDR. It says, I consolidated this summer and applied for an income-driven repayment plan, but was placed in the standard plan. Given all that is going on, should I sit tight or try to get it changed? Great question. Let's take a look at the answer. So, this question about consolidation can get very tricky when it comes to repayment plans and their eligibility for forgiveness under IDR and PSLF. When you consolidate your loans, the repayment term can go as long as 30 years. And if you enroll in that plan, you'll see that it's listed as the standard plan for a consolidation loan. The 10-year standard plan is the only standard plan that's eligible or that qualifies for public service loan forgiveness. And sometimes people will select the 30-year standard plan because the payment can be lower, but because it also says standard, which kind of makes it sound like that payment plan will qualify for PSLF, but it doesn't. The 30-year standard plan and the 10-year standard plan are different. The 10-year standard plan payments can count toward PSLF. The 30-year standard plan payments do not qualify for PSLF or the IDR cancellation. Because of the injunction, several servicers have just paused processing IDR applications. Like I said before, the paper application is available online, but from what we've seen, if you send one in, it's not going to be processed anyway. And of course, the online application is not available. So for right now, I would just be mindful that if you were in the 30-year standard plan under current rules, those payments would not count toward public service loan forgiveness. I know that it's not possible to get into an IDR plan right now, but if PSLF is what you're going for, then you would want to get into one of the income-driven repayment plans as soon as you are able to do so. If the standard 10-year plan becomes an option and it's affordable, that would ensure that you're making progress toward PSLF, but typically that 10-year standard plan per month is the most expensive plan that's available to most people. So keep that in mind. And good luck to you. All right, next question. Okay, shifting gears a bit. This question is about the FAFSA. It says, my FAFSA application for the 2024-2025 academic year has finally been submitted online. I've heard no word about my paper form. The online form says it's being processed / in review, and that my SAI cannot be calculated due to not providing my signature. But I did hit the sign button before submission. What should I do? Loaded question, and let's take a look at the answer. Okay, so if you were a student and you have a parent or a spouse who you added as a contributor to your 2024-2025 FAFSA, the missing signature might belong to one of those people. They need to log into studentaid.gov to complete their section and sign the form. If you have not received a FAFSA submission summary, this might be what's occurring with your 2024-2025 FAFSA. So make sure that you're checking with any other person who is a contributor to your FAFSA to make sure that they sign the form, because that might be what's holding up your form ultimately from being processed. All right, let's move on to the next question. Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped something. So the Department of Education does provide a workaround for this. If the student or parent signs their section of the FAFSA and the FAFSA has other contributors, then the person returns to the form before the other contributors have signed and submitted it, and they selected Save from the FAFSA menu without making changes, the signature of that student or parent is removed from the application. So this could be what's happening here. The workaround is to go back to studentaid.gov, return to that FAFSA, and have whichever party signature is missing, just go back and re-sign it. You don't have to make any changes to the form. You just need to go back and sign it again so that ultimately it will go through. All right, now we can move on to the next question. All right, I'm a prospective student for the 25-26 academic year. I completed my common application and I'm ready to do the financial aid part. Can I complete the FAFSA now for next year? This is a great question and a common question. Let's take a look at the answer. So, just a quick note about the timing of the FAFSA. Right now, we are in the 2024 to 2025 academic year. So the 2024-2025 FAFSA is the one that applies for the entire year. That means that if you were enrolling during the 2024-25 year, you could still complete the FAFSA. It's going to be out there for the rest of the academic year. If you're looking at 25-26, like this particular individual, the FAFSA for that year is not set to open until December of this year. So you can't complete the 2025-2026 FAFSA yet because it's not available yet. Usually it becomes available October 1st, but because of the changes that have been implemented recently, there are going to be some delays again this year. And we're not expecting the FAFSA for next academic year to become available until at least December. But our recommendation is for you to complete the 2024 to 2025 FAFSA. Reason being, you can get some practice. You can see what the application is like. You can also receive a FAFSA submission summary that can help you determine how much federal aid you could receive, particularly that student aid index. A lot of people are unaware that you can complete the FAFSA before the year that you're planning to enroll. So even if you're not enrolling until the 25-26 academic year, you can complete the 2024-2025 FAFSA to get some practice, and we are actively recommending that to students who are in the class of 2025 so that they can be prepared once the 25-26 FAFSA becomes available later this year. All right, let's move on to the next question. All right, this is from a current student. I accepted my Pell Grant for $7,395 for the 2024-2025 academic year. Looks like the disbursement is split up, $3,698 due in the fall of 24 and $3,697 due for the spring semester. It says, when my aid was dispersed, I only received $925 applied toward my account. Why did I only receive part of my Pell Grant? This is a great question, and this is something that we will probably hear more about as the programs that aren't offered across a traditional academic term continue to grow. Usually courses are offered in the fall, in the spring. There might be some condensed winter sessions as well as summer sessions. But financial aid is usually dispersed once in the fall, once in the spring. Those special terms add, I don't want to say extra work, but truly they do, extra work and potentially extra disbursements because they are outside of the fall and spring. But what we're also seeing are sessions that might be called modules or mini sessions that are hosted during the fall and spring semester, but the way that they're stacked or scheduled might cause you to not get your full disbursement for the fall all at once. So let's take a look at the detailed answer. All right, so in terms of figuring out your eligibility for the Pell Grant, your SAI, that's the Student Aid Index, as well as your enrollment intensities, or in other words, your credit load, that determines how much Pell you will be eligible for. Right now, it seems that for this borrower, their enrollment is less than a half-time status. So they might be enrolled in one of those arrangements where courses are happening throughout the fall semester, but they're in separate terms. So for the first term, there's a light credit load. For the next one, perhaps it picks up. For the third one, maybe it stays steady. But either way, you have multiple terms that are packed into this fall term. And so what we suspect is the disbursements have been split up this way because of the enrollment intensity, the way that the credit hours are structured. So not sure exactly what this calendar looks like, but I can speak from my personal experience in a doctoral program. We didn't take all 4 classes at once or 3 classes at once. We had one class that lasted 5 weeks, another class that lasted another 5 weeks, and so on. So for a fall semester, we had one course per mini session, let's say. And that enrollment intensity does help determine your eligibility for federal financial aid. So in this case, it looks like the disbursement was split up to reflect 3 credits. And if you take the 3 credits from this load plus the 6 credits from the next load and another 3 in the following load, you get a total load of 12 credits. The current 3 credit enrollment, 3 out of 12, is 1/4 of your enrollment during this fall semester. 1/4 of that Pell amount is $925. So you can verify this by contacting your financial aid office. They'll be able to tell you if that indeed was the reason for the smaller disbursement, and they should be able to let you know when future disbursements are coming. All right, let's move on to the next question. Okay, this one is about someone who is looking to start graduate school. Their employer, they're a teacher, their employer will cover some of their tuition expenses, and they want to know, should they complete the FAFSA to assist with covering their other costs? So let's take a look at the answer. I'm always going to tell people complete the FAFSA. This is so important because this document, this form can truly transform your future. It is the key to aid from the federal government, the state government, sometimes your school, as well as private scholarship providers. So even if your employer is going to pitch in toward your graduate school expenses, you want to complete the FAFSA because there might be other funding that you can get to take the burden of whatever expenses are left over off of you. So please do go to studentaid.gov so that you can complete that FAFSA. Sources of federal funding include federal work study positions, depending on your student aid index, also federal unsubsidized loans. Remember, when you go to graduate school, there are fewer options for federal financial aid, but unsubsidized loans remain available to graduate and professional students. For Marylanders, especially Marylanders who are teachers, the Maryland Higher Education Commission, which you'll hear us refer to as MHEC, has a Teaching Fellows Scholarship. The application is open right now. So if you're an undergraduate student or a graduate student, you are eligible to apply, and you can visit MHEC online at mhec.maryland.gov to learn more about that Teaching Fellows Scholarship. But absolutely complete the FAFSA so that you know that you'll be considered for every type of financial aid that is offered through your school. All right, let's move on to the next question. All right, I want to start taking classes at my local community college, which is Prince George's Community College, in the winter session. I'm not sure where to get started on going to college, and I do have to wait for the FAFSA. Do I have to wait, for the FAFSA to come out for next year's financial aid? First of all, I want to give a shout out to Prince George's Community College and the Owls. We have worked with PGCC quite a bit in the past on initiatives around PSLF as well as financial wellness for students. So shout out to PGCC, and grateful to hear from this prospective student who is looking to go to college there. All right, let's take a look at the answer. So yes, you can absolutely complete the 24-25 FAFSA. And just remember, it's the 2024-25 FAFSA. It covers the entire 24-25 academic year. So it's not too late for you to complete the FAFSA, especially if you're looking for enrollment later on in this academic year. So what we recommend is completing the admissions application so that you can go ahead, get accepted and enroll, complete the 24-25 FAFSA, apply for scholarships if necessary, make sure that you attend new student orientation once you're in, and complete any placement tests that might be necessary. When it comes to this process, the school itself is going to be the best source of information about just integrating yourself into the campus. From completing the application to enrolling to attending your first class, getting financial aid, all of that, all of those questions are best answered by someone at the school level. So I encourage you to reach out to admissions and or financial aid at Prince George's Community College. All right, let's move on to our next question. Oh, wow, that does it for our questions. All right, so I do want to close by saying that we have 4 days left. 4 days left to submit your application for the Maryland Student Loan Debt Relief Tax Credit for the tax year 2024. The deadline is September 15th at 11:59 p.m. So if you have student loans, I believe you had to borrow at least $20,000, and at the time that you apply, you have to have at least $5,000 outstanding. Make sure that if you want this tax credit, you submit your application by 11:59 p.m. on September the 15th. The application does require documentation. You have to document your attendance at the universities. You also have to submit documentation of your student loans. And as someone who has applied for and received this credit, I can tell you the application wasn't too lengthy for me, but that's because I had my transcripts. I had documentation of my student loans, and because of the work I do in this space, I know how to get to that information pretty quickly. So today is September 11th. You've got 4 days. If you still want to submit that application, I encourage you to get on it ASAP, and you can file that application online at Maryland's one-stop portal. So please do get your applications in for that student loan debt relief tax credit by September the 15th. All right, let's move on to one more resource for Marylanders with student loans, and that is the State Student Loan Ombudsman. The Student Loan Ombudsman is housed within the state's Department of Labor, and that office is there to help borrowers who are experiencing problems with their servicers. And these are problems that you have tried to work out with the servicer, but there's no resolution, and you need to escalate things. You can take this to a third party like the ombudsman that has authority that can compel servicers to provide certain information and respond. So if you have any of the following problems, please do reach out to the ombudsman's office. Failure by the servicer to communicate with you as a borrower, errors in crediting principal and interest payments, misapplied payments, inaccurate interest rate calculations, billing errors, loan consolidations and or modifications errors, and or inappropriate collection activity or tactics. You can visit the Maryland Student Loan Ombudsman online at the Department of Labor's website. The link is streaming across the bottom of the screen. You can find them at dllr.state.md.us. In addition to advocating for yourself by engaging the Student Loan Ombudsman, you can also reach out to the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. They are at consumerfinance.gov, and we highly recommend engaging them for, just concerns that you have tried to address and are getting nowhere with. They keep records of these complaints, and it's really important that they hear about the real-time student loan borrower experience, so that can help them, work toward resolving these claims, but also identify trends in what borrowers are seeing. So please do visit them online at consumerfinance.gov if you'd like to file a complaint with them. I'm looking at social media. I don't see any questions on Instagram or coming from Facebook. So I know we covered a lot today, and hopefully your questions have been answered. If not, please do tag us on social media. We are at the MCCFW, or you can go to our website at mccfw.org/contact, and you can submit your question. We might pick your question for inclusion in the next edition of Office Hours. Before we go, I just wanted to make sure that I acknowledge what today is. Today is September 11th, and we are just thinking about the people who lost their lives that day and their loved ones, all of the first responders who were there to just help in such an unbelievable situation and just make such an enormous sacrifice. We could not let this day go by without acknowledging what happened on September 11th of 2001, and just really sending every bit of positivity to all parties who were affected by that, and just remembering on this day what happened back then. On that note, I'm going to check the comments just one more time. I don't see that anything new has come through. As always, I thank you so much for joining us for Office Hours. We will be back on September 25th with the next edition of Office Hours. And in the meantime, if you'd like to engage, like I said, please do tag us on social media. We are at the MCCFW. If you have used the information and it's been of value to you, please do go online and support us by making a donation at mccfw.org/support. The Maryland Center for Collegiate Financial Wellness is a 501c3 nonprofit organization in the state of Maryland. Again, that's mccfw.org/support. Other ways to support are to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Facebook page, Instagram, as well as our X, aka Twitter accounts at the MCCFW. I'm going to check one more time for social media questions or comments. I don't see any. So at this time, there's one more thing I want to say. I forgot. We launched a podcast last year called the CREST Podcast. And of course, CREST is the acronym for Creditworthy, Ready, Resilient, Empowered, Successful, and Thriving. And we are now in our second season. And this season, we decided that we were going to share both the audio and video. So now you'll notice on our YouTube page that the Crest podcast, this first episode of season 2 is available. And we featured Regina Robinson, who is the founder of Suited for Success College Planning Services, based here in Prince George's County, Maryland. So if you are subscribed to the YouTube channel, you should have seen that podcast drop yesterday. If not, please do visit us at youtube.com/@the-MCCFW or get the audio version of the podcast at mccfw.org/podcast. And on that note, since there are no further comments or questions, I want to thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Office Hours. And as always, until next time, be well.